We also pointed out the prevalence already of Paul's call for the Christian, the mature Christian, to be one that is overwhelmingly thankful. The Christian is a grateful person. One of the things Paul emphasizes the most in this letter, in fact. The word for thankfulness or being thankful is used more in the book of Colossians than any other book of the New Testament, except for 1 Corinthians, which has 12 more chapters and uses it one more time. In verse 3 of chapter 1, he says, we always thank God for your faith and love. In verse 12, he says, we are giving thanks to the Father who has qualified you. In chapter 2, verse 7, it says that we are to be abounding in thanksgiving or overflowing in thanksgiving. Chapter 3, verse 15, he says simply, be thankful. Chapter 3, verse 16, with thankfulness in your heart to God. Verse 17, giving thanks to the Father. Chapter 4, verse 2, continue in prayer, being watchful with thanksgiving. This book about the need for Christians to mature, for Christians to grow up, is largely a book about the need for the Christian to be a thankful person. The need for the Christian to be grateful and thankful. It seems that one of the defining characteristics of the mature Christian is indeed this. If I asked you to think of the most mature Christians in your life, I'd be willing to bet that you would define them largely as thankful people, grateful people that probably don't take enough credit for themselves and tend to give others more credit than they deserve. So, you want to mature in Christ, start here. As Brother Wayne says, the Christian has an attitude of gratitude. The life of the Christian is a life of thanksgiving. Isn't it interesting that we don't have to be told to complain, right? Or taught how. You don't got to teach a kid how to complain. It does that very well, right? What we do have to be taught clearly and loudly and repetitively is to give thanks. I'm not sure there are any two commands I've given more to my children than stop whining and say thank you. Right? That is the life of the parent. Reminding your child over and over, stop whining and what do you say? How many times does a parent say that? What do you say? Right? What do you say? What should you say? And then they wait. And when the child says nothing, they say thank you. Right? You got to say thank you. You got to show some semblance of gratitude, at least fake it, right? I mean, it's so frustrating. Like Naomi is 6 years old, right? She's 6 years old. Now that might not seem like a lot, but that means for the last 72 months, anytime anyone ever gave her something or said something nice to her or did anything for her, I said, say thank you. And I still have to do it, right? 6 years later, still I had to say, what do you say? Right? After every birthday gift, what do you say? Go tell him thank you. Go give him a hug. When is she going to figure it out? Right? When is she going to know this is how this humanity thing works? They give you something, they say something nice, and you have to say thank you. Have you ever thought about why that is so important to the parent? Right? Why is it such a big deal for us? Why can't we just let it go? Why do we have to force our kids to say thank you? Or alternatively, why is complaining so bothersome? Have you ever thought about that? Why does complaining of others, not your own of course, but why does the complaining of others bother you so much? Why is it so draining to be around people that just complain all the time? Why is that draining to be around negative people that just complain? Why does it bother us when our children complain? What is it about complaining that is just offensive to us as parents, as humans, even though it's so natural to us personally? It seems to me, in large part, it's because complaining is the opposite of giving thanks. And at our very bottom, at the bottom of who we are, at the bottom of the image of God on us, at the bottom of our creatureliness, it is that indeed we are created beings underneath the great Creator, made indeed to worship the great Creator, and worship is nothing if it is not gratitude. Worship is indeed a position of gratitude, and that down deep at the bottom of us, we know that foundationally we should be thankful creatures. That we are not the Creator who deserves the thanks, but that we are the creations who should live lives giving thanks repetitively and eternally in the form of worship to the one who created us, to the one who made us, and to the one that every moment gives us breath. That our entire existence is based upon the continued generosity of this giver, and that we are those creatures who should live ever in a posture of gratitude and thanksgiving. And so, since we know that down deep, it feels more than just wrong, but offensive to be around in the midst of and surrounded by complaining. D.A. Carson says the first responsibility of the creature is to recognize his creatureliness and respond with gratitude. And complaining is the opposite of that. Think about, as a way of illustration, think about a 9 or 10-year-old child who is surrounded by gifts at a birthday party. And he opens one of those gifts, unwraps it, and he pulls out a toy. And he furrows his brow, and he throws the toy down, and he says, I don't want that dumb gift. Now, all of you parents, you may have felt like your shoulder go like that. You're ready to smack the kid, because that's the reaction we get when our children do that, right? There's this fury that comes on the parent when the child acts like that when he's being given gifts, right? Because the child in his 9, 10-year-old brain doesn't really think about the things the parent knows, right? That this person went out of their way to go to the store and went to the toy aisle and looked around to see what they thought this child would like, and they picked something out they thought that would bring them joy, and then they took their hard-earned money that they could have spent on themselves and spent it for this child instead, and then went to the godforsaken event that is a birthday party for a child and traveled there with their gas, probably on a Saturday, probably during the Bama game, and they're there while this child's opening presents, and they've waited for this moment where the child opens the present, and they'll get some joy, right? It'll make their effort more palatable, at least. And the child opens the present, and they're excited, and then the child does that. Like the child has the audacity, despite all this person has done for them, to complain and whine about a gift that was given to them. And we hate that. Right? We hate it. We hate that in us, and we hate that in our children. And even think about, to push it further, think about the conversation the parent has with the child after this occurs, right? The parent says, when someone gives you something, you have to show gratitude. You have to say thank you. And the child says, but I didn't like it. And what does the parent say? That doesn't matter, right? You have to pretend like you like it. That's the basic message is deceive them into thinking that you're happy, even though you're not happy. And so what really happens is in this moment, we say what's more important is that you show gratitude even if you got to lie to do it, right? Lying is not as bad as being ungrateful. That's really what we believe, right? It's weird for us to say that, but in those kind of illustrations, we see that really being ungrateful is worse to us than even being deceptive. That you should be deceptive if it means being grateful. But at the bottom of us, we find ingratitude entirely offensive, and complaining as a result of that entirely offensive. Not our own complaints and ingratitudes, but anybody else's. Ingratitude is a poison. It's a sickness. It affects everything, and we hate it. And I think it's right that we hate it, reflecting something very deep in us. This feeling about gratitude is made even sharper, similarly, when we realize all that God has done for us, despite what we have done to him. When we come to realize all that Christ and God has done for us, ingratitude becomes grotesque. How could you come to God? How could you look at God and at Christ with anything but overwhelming gratitude?